Good day. Today, we'll be taking a closer look at both open access, OA, and open educational resources, abbreviated as OER. We'll define both terms. We'll talk about the relationship they share to one another, and we'll touch on OA and OER considerations for both faculty and their students. Scholar and open access advocate Peter Suber defines open access as literature that is digital, online, free of charge, and free of most copyright and licensing restrictions. Another widely used explanation of open access comes from the Budapest Open Access Initiative, which describes open access as the freedom of users to read, download, copy, distribute, print, search, or link to the full texts of articles, crawl them for indexing, pass them as data to software, or use them for any other lawful purpose without financial, legal, or technical barriers other than those inseparable from gaining access to the internet itself. Both of these definitions of open access stand in direct opposition to the traditional method of publishing scholarly research, which is often hidden behind technical, legal, or financial barriers or paywalls, even though it may be publicly funded. Here are two common terms you may see when looking at open access publications. Green OA. That is self-archiving. Depending on the contract terms you signed with your publisher, you, as an author of a scholarly publication, can deposit a copy of that publication into an open access repository. In addition to publication in a traditional scholarly journal, you may be able to deposit a preprint or postprint copy of your article into an open access repository on your personal website. Gold OA, this is sometimes referred to as publisher level open access. Say you write a paper and you submit it to a journal in the usual way, and the publisher makes the article freely available upon publication with no additional effort on your part. Now, some journals are entirely OA. They do this with every article, and some publish under a hybrid model where some articles in the issue will be available OA and some will not. Some OA publishers will charge an article processing fee to publish an article. Sometimes the fee is paid by the funding institution, and sometimes it is paid directly by the author. Now, in an open access approach as a creator, you can choose to provide your articles, images, figures, research data, and other scholarly output through open access, which means that your work becomes more widely available and more easily cited and built upon. Now, before we transition to our next definition, let's talk a little bit about the driving factors behind these two concepts. The open access model exists to enable the free sharing of research documents in academic journals, whereas the open educational resources push is to provide faculty and their students with free access to any number of educational materials. Now, there are some similarities in the open access and OER movements. Both of these movements are critical of the high costs of academic and educational materials. Then they both advocate that publicly funded research ought to include free public access. So there are some similarities. Faculty and students have a few areas to consider when thinking about OA. Student access to research materials is usually through a college library database, and databases sometimes carry an embargo period, meaning that the research materials published in scholarly journals can impose anywhere from a 6 to 12-month delay in allowing access even through the databases. Faculty who may be concerned with that old adage, publish or perish, may not fully understand that OA often means that their work in exchange for publication may belong to that journal and not to themselves, and even to the point of restricting posting their own work on their own personal website. Now let's take a closer look at OER. Now, a good definition of OER says that it includes educational materials that can be freely downloaded, edited, and shared to better serve all of the students. So shared and built upon. Remembering, of course, that OER materials include the rights to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute, the 5 R's of OER. When OER comes with OER comes the power and ability to use these methods to mix materials to make something tailored directly to your needs. And faculty are not tied to a specific publisher or a specific ancillary content. Now, in contrast to the traditional method, OER replaces expensive proprietary content used in academic courses, and digital items can be stored, copied, and distributed for near zero cost. And there is worldwide access to free open learning materials. Again, that stands in direct contrast to the traditional method that you see here. It can be costly and restrictive. Oftentimes, the streaming models that are employed by publishers nowadays limit access to educational materials to the time frame that the student has access will be limited. So for example, if you buy the access to a text, the student is limited in being able to refer to that text only during the time frame of the course. So that can be quite limiting. In April 2018, National Public Radio reported on a recent study performed by the Wisconsin Hope Lab that found that 36% of American college students report being food insecure. And that same number of students, or around that same number, reported that they were having some difficulties with housing as well. 9% of college students are reportedly homeless, and the cost of a college education is only going up, vastly outpacing the rate of inflation. So what faculty need to know is that oftentimes fewer than half of their students will actually have their textbook purchased and in hand on the first day of class, and almost a third of the students will never purchase the textbook for the class, instead relying on borrowing copies from friends and pirating versions found online and using the outdated versions that they're able to buy inexpensively, for example, at a used book retailer. But without that textbook, the up-to-date textbook, often these students will struggle to compete academically. Whereas if a faculty member considers OER use, not only does it provide the faculty member with control over the course content, it actually gives the rights to remix free materials to meet student needs. For example, the students may actually engage with faculty, moving beyond the lecture and the text-giving instructions to involve students in the creation of their own learning materials. So OER, it has a lot of promise for both faculty and students. Besides the money concerns, OER may provide a new way of students to engage. All right, so today our operative word is open. Open access and open educational resources. We need to keep an open mind to fully grasp these concepts. Advocates for both OA and OER education should support each other in the advancement toward very similar goals. For more information about what has been presented today on today's topic, please visit these websites. Thank you for watching.